classes during the 17th century were landowning gentry who were producing more food per acre thanks to the agricultural revolution and merchants who were making money due to expanding trade and imperialism. These classes held the key to government finances because they were the ones that had the money and the land and the goods that could be taxed, which meant that they have the power to sway the governments. And in many cases, these productive classes used the power to give themselves a say in the running of their country. For example, advocating for a constitutional government so the monarchy could be kept in check. And we see this in Dutch history because these classes brought about constitutionalism, and which would eventually create and came to be known as the Dutch Golden Age. Like the British reformers, the Dutch had an active business class who were backing the struggle from independence from Spain. This struggle involved the 7 northern provinces as the Low Countries allying with the 10 southern provinces, known as after 1756, to defeat the Spanish in the 80 Years' War, which came to be known as the Dutch War of Independence or the Dutch Revolts. But by the end of the 16th century, the United Provinces of the Low Countries were completely independent from Spain. However, it wasn't fully formalized until the 1648 Treaty of Westphalia. The 7 northern provinces eventually became the Netherlands, and each province of the Dutch Republic had a regent who oversaw the affairs. While as a group, they participated in the States General, which was a kind of council of representatives, which each province sent out a representative for their province, known as the stadholder. Out of all the provinces, Holland was the most prosperous and contributed to the most overall finances of the Netherlands. Holland favored peace over war, while on the other hand, Zeeland, whose privateers seized ships and during the chaos of warfare, were therefore somewhat less opposed to it. There were many small disagreements between the provinces about if war was good for the economy or if the stadholder should become more of a monarchical figure. But despite the measure of political disunity, the Dutch prospered in the 17th century, and in spite of warfare, it actually became a comparatively tolerant state. Religion was definitely a big part during the Dutch Golden Age. Many different religions escaped to the Netherlands, such as the Jews escaping persecution by Isabella and Ferdinand in Spain. Pilgrims and many other religious nonconformists also migrated to the Netherlands. And during this time, the citizens of the Dutch Republic were among the most diverse in Europe, and that contributed to the overall advancement and prosperity of the Netherlands. Trade was definitely a big part of the Dutch's overall advancement. Cornelius Matlief de Jange was one person who oversees trade, and the Dutch government took notice of the riches promised by the spice trade. So they authorized the creation of trading companies whose military forces didn't just take territory, but they also sought to advance trade, and at times acquiring goods or establishing trade routes via force or threat. Holland's merchants began bringing back an array of plants and commodities, which stimulated innovation, whilst geographic positioning enabled its ships to access north, south, east, and west trade routes. So soon the Dutch had replaced the Portuguese as a primary Atlantic traders, although the English would eventually overtake them. But as of right now, the Dutch were thriving. The Dutch took advantage of their independence from Spain and reduced their war expenses, or not from Spain, but in general, and reduced their war expenses by expanding their shipping capacity and building a network of canals connecting 400 miles of major cities, which improved communication and trade regionally. Amsterdam eventually became the banking and commercial center in Europe, with great technological advancements such as nighttime illumination, reducing crime in the city. Art during this time was a huge part of the Dutch Golden Age. Art during this time opposed the ideas of the Baroque style, and painters were painting more everyday life scenes, showing the distinctive nature of the Dutch culture. And painters like Johannes Vermeer painted maps and globes, testifying to the middle and upper classes. Now that the Dutch were prospering, the English sought to take back control of the seas with the Navigation Act of 1651. And this was an example of legislated mercantilism, meaning that the mercantilist theory at this time said that to become wealthier, you have to take wealth from other places. And tariffs is an example of this, and mostly happened in colonized regions, but it also happened between European countries as they try to take wealth from one another. And this eventually slowly led to the decline of the Dutch. Between 1652 and 1674, the English provoked warfare on the Dutch, the Anglo-Dutch Wars. However, the Dutch prevailed in the first two wars, but one exception was the Treaty of Breda, which ended the War of 1665 to 1667, when the British got control of New Amsterdam. But the third of the wars, from 1672 to 74, concerned politics more than the mercantilist issues, because it aroused high passions over enhancing the role of the stadtholder and bringing William of Orange to become perhaps stadtholder for life. So the fight over how concentrated power should be and who should have the power clearly wasn't over. So even as it continued to prosper, the Dutch Republic was profoundly and politically divided by the end of the 17th century.